peoples in Canada for this assessment due to their historical and ongoing marginalization, which has led to significant health and socioeconomic disparities. Indigenous communities face higher rates of chronic illness and struggle with poverty, unemployment, and inadequate housing. Additionally, their unique cultural practices require respectful and integrated healthcare planning. Focusing on Indigenous peoples allows us to explore and promote culturally appropriate health interventions, contribute to policy changes, and support ongoing reconciliation efforts. Our goal is to raise awareness, promote fairness, and amplify Indigenous voices to achieve a more equitable society.
We are assessing the Indigenous community in Toronto. Indigenous people or Aboriginals are the original inhabitants of North America, including First Nation, Inuits, and Metis. These are recognized for their long-standing tradition, languages, and practices, and have deep connection to the land and natural resources, which are vital to their cultural identity and way of life. We chose to focus on Indigenous people in Toronto due to their unique challenges, including discrimination, poverty, and limited access to healthcare, education, and housing. Indigenous peoples in Toronto face significant issues such as affordable housing, mental health, job security, with 90% being low income and 30% experiencing unstable housing and homelessness.
Moreover, Indigenous communities are often underrepresented in national surveys, leading them to inaccurate counts and overlooking their needs. For instance, the 2021 census reported 22,925 Indigenous people in Toronto, but an Indigenous-led survey estimates the number to be as high as 88,397. We are particularly interested in exploring the social determinants of health affecting Indigenous populations. Due to colonization, forced removal, racism, discrimination, and institutional bias, Indigenous Canadians face significant socioeconomic inequality. This leads to health disparities such as increased diabetes, hypertension, substance abuse disorders, mental health challenges, and higher post-mortality rates. In summary, our focus on Indigenous people in Toronto aims to address their challenges with discrimination, poverty, and limited access to housing, mental health, and job security. We strive to promote fairness, raise awareness, and amplify Indigenous voices.
To effectively assess the needs of Indigenous community in Toronto, we would conduct a comprehensive needs assessment survey. This method provides a detailed understanding of the community's specific challenges and requirements. First, surveys and interviews. In survey, we will design and distribute detailed surveys to a representative sample of the Indigenous community. The survey will include questions on various aspects such as health status, access to healthcare, housing conditions, education, employment, and social services. We will ensure that the surveys are culturally sensitive and available in multiple formats, like online, paper, and verbal, to accommodate different preferences and literacy levels. Next is interviews. In addition to surveys, we will conduct one-on-one interview with the community members. This interview will allow us to gather in-depth qualitative data and personal stories that provide context to the survey results. We would focus on understanding personal experiences with discrimination, barriers to accessing services, and the community's strengths and resources.
For the process, first is design. We will create survey and interview questions in collaboration with Indigenous leaders and organizations to ensure cultural relevance and sensitivity. For distribution, we will use multiple channels and distribute surveys, including community centers, social media, and local events. offer incentives for participation to encourage higher response rates. For collection, we will collect responses over a set period, ensuring confidentiality and anonymity to protect participants' privacy. For analysis, we will analyze the data to identify key trends, common challenges, and areas needing urgent attention. For our resources, first is personnel. Train survey administrators and interviewers, ideally from within the community, to build trust and ensure effective communication. For our tools, we will use digital survey platforms, recording devices for interviews, and data analysis software. And lastly, for funding, financial resources to cover the costs of survey, distribution, incentives, and personnel. By conducting a thorough needs assessment survey and interviews, we can gather comprehensive data that informs future community development initiatives. This approach ensures that our strategies are directly aligned with the community's needs, fostering sustainable and impactful development.
We chose to conduct a thorough needs assessment through surveys and interviews to understand the Indigenous community in Toronto. Here's why. First is understanding the community. We want to learn about their current situation, including health, housing, and access to services. The next is identifying their strengths and challenges. Through this assessment, we aim to discover what the community does well, like cultural resilience, and what challenges they face, such as healthcare disparities and housing issues. The third is capacity building strategies. We plan to empower the community by empowering educational workshops, supporting cultural initiatives, and promoting health education. Fourth, existing organizations and services. We will also study organizations and services already helping the community, ensuring we collaborate effectively and avoid duplication. And lastly, engaging stakeholders. Key people like elders and community leaders will be involved through meetings and partnerships with local Indigenous groups, ensuring our approach respects their culture and values. By doing this assessment, we aim to use data to guide our efforts in supporting and empowering the Indigenous community in Toronto.
Some voices that may not be heard regarding issues affecting the Indigenous community in Toronto include marginalized groups within the community, such as youth, individuals with disabilities, and those living in remote areas. Their perspectives are vital but often overlooked. To engage these voices, we could implement inclusive outreach strategies, such as targeted surveys and focus groups, facilitated in accessible formats and locations. Partnering with community organizations that specialize in these groups could also ensure the meaningful participation.
Strength and limitation of our approach. First is strength. Our method, including surveys and interviews, allow us to gather detailed insight into community need and strength. They provide a comprehensive understanding to guide effective interventions. Second, limitations. This approach may not capture the full spectrum of life experiences or the nuances of cultural practices that shape health and well-being. Additionally, language barriers and trust issues could hinder participation. Third, additional strategies. We could incorporate participatory action research, community asset mapping, and digital storytelling to complement traditional methods, fostering deeper community engagement and cultural understanding. Lastly, advocacy and ethical considerations. It is crucial to advocate for equitable representation and respect cultural protocols. Ethical consideration includes obtaining informed consent, protecting participant confidentiality, and ensuring that research benefit outweigh its risk. Upholding Indigenous sovereignty and right throughout the process is paramount.
About the Indigenous community in Toronto, first is challenges. We learned about the historical challenges like discrimination and poverty that affect Indigenous people in Toronto. Strengths, discovering their cultural resilience and community support systems showed us their ability to overcome challenges. Their health needs, understanding their higher rates of diabetes and mental health issues emphasized like the need for targeted healthcare. For their respective culture, learning to integrate traditional healing practices into healthcare highlighted the importance of cultural sensitivity. And lastly, engagement. Engaging directly with community members taught us effective ways to involve them in decision making.
About community nursing assessments. First is the holistic approach. We see the importance of considering social, cultural, and environmental factors in community healthcare. Next is the data use. Using data to understand needs helps us tailor healthcare services effectively. The third is partnership. Collaborating with local groups and leaders helps us improve healthcare delivery. Fourth, advocacy. Advocating for health equity and justice is integral to community nursing. And lastly, learning and flexibility. Continuous learning and adapting to community needs are crucial in healthcare.
Working together on the assessment. First, teamwork. Working together improved our planning and analysis skills. Second, respect. Respecting Indigenous culture deepened our trust and understanding. Third, ethics. Upholding ethical standards like consent and confidentiality guides our work. Fourth, improvement. Reflecting on our methods helps us refine our approach. Lastly, impact. Our goal is to advocate effectively for policies that meet community needs.
Thank you for joining us in exploring the needs and strength of the Indigenous community in Toronto.
We've learned the importance of cultural sensitivity, collaboration, and advocacy in addressing the unique challenges faced by this resilient community.
By understanding and amplifying their voices, we can contribute to a more equitable and inclusive society.
Let's continue to work together, respect cultural diversity, and support each other in creating positive change. Remember, every step towards understanding is a step towards better health and well-being for all.
Thank you for watching!